Hi there, my name is Dusan Wegner. I write essays in German, and occasionally I present these essays in German here on YouTube. Now, something happened in Germany, some things are happening in Germany, and partly motivated by this, I will, for a change, use the world's lingua franca, English. And for the German audience, aufgrund gewisser Entwicklungen in Deutschland, ihr habt es ja mitbekommen, wird es vielleicht notwendig, ein paar Dinge auf Englisch zu sagen. Die Übersetzung findet ihr als Untertitel hier bei YouTube, jetzt aber Englisch. You know, back when I studied philosophy, I noticed something unexpected about the reality of German philosophy. Something that you could say went against my intuition. You know, I would have expected that most and the most interesting papers on German thought and philosophy were written in German, in Germany, by Germans. But again and again, I stumbled on Americans explaining Immanuel Kant, Karl Marx, or Arthur Schopenhauer deeper and with way more enthusiasm than I ever heard or read a German do. Each and every unapologetic Nietzsche fan I ever met spoke English. I mean, there are Nietzsche readers in Germany, but the unapologetic Nietzsche fans that I met all spoke English and mostly were rooted in English-speaking countries. I mean, of course, it doesn't help that Übermensch could be and was misinterpreted in Germany. The word Über invites a sort of vulgar and ahistoric and therefore plainly wrong interpretation. Well, when I think of Hegel, and I'm surely not the only one here, I think of Slavoj Žižek, a Slovenian philosopher who too was explaining Hegel, or he still is, he was and still is explaining Hegel. I mean, sort of like Mitch Hedberg, who was taking drugs and still is. Slavoj Žižek was explaining Hegel and still is, and he does it in his unique variant of English, just as I am speaking in my unique variant of Dusan Wegner English. Or take the Austrian, not Australian, Austrian, and therefore German writing psychiatrist Carl Jung. Let's be honest about it. Carl Jung would be less known, a lot less known among the, let's say, social media population of the world without the English-speaking Canadian Jordan Peterson. Or Kafka. Don't even get me started on Kafka and the Kafka interpretation, but you get what I mean. I could go on. German ideas, or ideas firstly formulated in German, have co-created modern thought. Concepts originating in Germany or German-speaking communities have permeated the current, not only American, but global zeitgeist. Of course, you noticed zeitgeist is one of those German words and concepts that people can't really and also do not want or need to translate. By the way, I love the way Americans pronounce zeitgeist sometimes. They don't say zeitgeist, they say zeitgeist. And it's wrong for a German speaker, it's wrong, but it sounds more fitting to the word than the correct version, zeitgeist. I'll stick to German for now. Zeitgeist is the literal translation, means spirit of the time. It could be described as the general culture, the cultural, intellectual, ethical, and political climate of a particular era, the zeitgeist. But yeah, zeitgeist is zeitgeist. You have to feel it. You have to feel the meaning, or you should learn to feel it. One could, it would be great fun to do so. One could write essays, books, or dedicated movie scripts on each of these untranslatable German words and concepts. I mean, there's a reason why they are untranslatable, because they just describe something unique from a unique perspective. Another one is Weltschmerz. Weltschmerz. It's about roughly the sadness, melancholy, and existential despair when you realize that life will never satisfy all your emotional needs, and yet, hopefully, you cling to this life. By the way, a beautiful illustration of Weltschmerz is a joke that Woody Allen, speaking right into the camera, tells in the opening monologue of Annie Hall. If I may try to quote, there's an old joke. Two elderly women are at a Catskill mountain resort, and one of them says, "Boy, the food at this place is really terrible." The other one says, "Yeah, I know, and such small portions." Woody contextualizes that joke then, and he says, "Well, that's essentially how I feel about life. Full of loneliness and misery and suffering and unhappiness, and it's all over much too quickly." That's to me, that sounds roughly like Weltschmerz. I personally would maybe add to this recipe for Weltschmerz, I would add regret. Regretting the chances you missed, of course. Or, as Larry David, I think, adds in Whatever Works, or the character played by Larry David, regretting the stocks you didn't buy, regretting the better roads you were too timid or too blind or plainly too stupid or too lazy to take. Today's youth could add a yet to be named pain, a new kind of pain that you experience when you think about the chances that your parents had but you never will. That's modern Weltschmerz. Maybe it's something else. We'll come to that. Guys, there is a Weltschmerz German in every one of us, in you too. Sometimes the German in you feels Fernweh, sometimes Gemütlichkeit, sometimes Schadenfreude. Beautiful, funny words. And sometimes we stumble on concepts that we feel should have an established German words, but we can't think of one, and then we could make these words up. I love the series, the comedy series, 2.5 Men. I mean, 2.5 Men with Charlie Sheen, of course. And in one episode, Rose explains the German concept Schadenfreude to Charlie. She says Schadenfreude, but she means Schadenfreude, I think. And then she makes up a new German word that sounds to me like Glaukenstucken. She makes it up, yeah, but according to Rose, it means feeling guilty for having felt Schadenfreude. And I must honestly say, while this word Glaukenstucken doesn't make much sense, I know this feeling of guilt for having felt Schadenfreude. Beautiful. I myself, I think, I've come up with a German word, a new German word, Zukunftsweh. I couldn't Google it, used before me at least. Zukunftsweh. The word is inspired by Fernweh and Heimweh. Fernweh is the sometimes beautifully painful longing for faraway places, for traveling and new experiences. Heimweh actually translates to English as homesickness, and that's the painful longing for home, for returning to safety, returning to the known, sometimes experienced while scratching the Fernweh itch. Scratching the Fernweh itch, you're traveling and you're feeling Heimweh. What I call Zukunftsweh is maybe a kind of counterpart or a complement, a extension of nostalgia. Nostalgia is the painful longing for a better past that may or may not have happened. Zukunftsweh then is the longing for our belief in or hope for a future that now no longer seems feasible. I long for the hope, for the belief that a better future will come, can come. Yes, I feel a painful nostalgia for the time when I believed that a better future awaits. This pain I call Zukunftsweh. Now, there's a reason I'm expressing these thoughts in English as a German of Czech origin. Germany is what I could maybe a little dramatically call is attempting suicide. Again. Germany is attempting suicide. Again. Suicide as a democracy, as an economical powerhouse, and as a society. The people of Germany are bombarded with propaganda messages day and night, from literally the birth, the hospital they're born in, till the end. Propaganda tells them what to think, what to believe to be true and to be not true, what to do with their bodies, what to feel, especially what to feel, what to hate and whom to hate. I'm not joking. There are literal marches through Berlin telling people whom to hate, the opposition. And, of course, propaganda tells them who to vote for and who not to vote for. And if the Germans still possess the audacity to vote in a way that the current de facto one party doesn't approve of, the German power oligarchy finds a way to ignore the election results. Yeah, that is a suicide of democracy. And Germany, as is by now well known, is currently deindustrializing itself, or it's being deindustrialized by its government or maybe higher powers. You tell me. For example, by turning off reliable sources of energy. Germany turned off nuclear energy and is importing nuclear energy from very old and or newly built nuclear power plants in neighboring countries. It's madness. Germany is committing economical suicide by forcing absurd laws and regulation on existing industries, which then leave the country, by forcing one of the highest tax and deductions rates worldwide on its workers, which frankly demotivates workers, as it is starting to become more sensible to just do nothing and gather the generous payments from the state. For years now, companies are moving their production abroad. Currently, even the Uber-German, and by the way, Uber politically correct Volkswagen is considering moving some of its production out of Germany. So I read currently. You might say, or you might want to point out that Germany still is selling billions in export, that it's currently still the strongest, I think, economy in the EU, and one of the strongest worldwide, etc. But it's sort of a philosophical question. When you see a cup on a table and somehow it's being thrown down and it's falling down, in the state of falling, do you still call it a intact cup, or do you call it already broken? I already call it broken. And while it's falling, and I know reality. I know what will happen according in the next half second. So to me, it's mentally already broken. And you know what? To Asian philosophers, to the wise men of the East, the cup is already broken while it's standing on the table. It's just a matter of time. And to stay in this metaphor, I don't see anyone catching the German cup. This time there will be no Marshall Plan. Quite the contrary. Nobody's catching the German cup while it's already heading for the floor, and some parts of Germany already have hit the floor and shattered. And to all that comes the societal change in Germany due to open borders and plainly insane and globally unique Willkommenskultur, literally welcome culture, rising crime levels, the loss of public spaces, and the slow collapse, or some say fast collapse, of the educational system. So in these times I wonder what will remain of das Deutsche, Germanness, das Deutsche, when there is no more Germany. Can there be das Deutsche, the Germanness, or how you would call it, without Germany? Well, for one thing, we still will have all the German writers and the musicians of the past. And we will have many beautiful, untranslatable words and concepts. In the last decades, Germans have practiced a lot of Vergangenheitsbewältigung, another very German word. Vergangenheitsbewältigung means coming to terms or dealing with your past. As modern Germany is transforming into a propaganda state, Vergangenheitsbewältigung has come to mean that anybody who disagrees with the official narrative, any Abweichler, another German word, is labeled a Nazi. That's a German but internationally known word and concept. Labeling any opposition, any true ideological opposition or opposition to the one truth, one narrative, a Nazi, automatically confers upon the institutions of the propaganda state the quasi-authority to combat the Abweichler with any means and weapons it deems necessary. The German logic is roughly this: anybody who disagrees with the one allowed narrative, like open borders, deindustrialization, etc., anybody who disagrees or even dares to question it is labeled a Nazi, and therefore can and has to be fought and brought down with the means that should have been used against the Nazis back then. That can be called and should be called intellectual suicide, but also a suicide as a democracy. You can't have a democracy when there's only one allowed party line. We've had that in Germany, and it had democratic in the democracy, DDR in the name, and still wasn't that. It is fortunate that German ideas and insights have fans and scholars outside of Germany. Thoughts written in German by German thinkers have been among the most precise and, yes, human, menschlich thoughts ever thought. I believe there is beauty and happiness to be found in precise thinking. I'm not the only one who feels beauty and happiness when experiencing precise thought. Beauty and happiness, or as you would say in German, Schönheit und Glück. And isn't that what it is all about? Schönheit und Glück. Yeah, that's all for today, folks. Dankeschön. Have a great day. Leave a comment with your favorite German expression. See you soon. Auf Wiedersehen.